listen, we've gotten a lot of atomic breath scenes in Godzilla films. A lot of great atomic breath scenes across multiple decades, right? But how they show this one is just so horrifying and destructive, in which is he's powering up his atomic breath, and you see the plates, the spines on his back, like popping out of his back and being illuminated by the the blue atomic energy, and then and he shoots it out of his mouth. But it's not like like a flame like it's often portrayed. It's like a laser blast that then lands like further into the city and goes and creates a huge mushroom cloud. It's like it just dropped another atomic bomb. We can go ahead and we can move on to the next part of my show tonight. And originally I wasn't going to do this, but it kind of just occurred to me the other night when we were kind of going over the various Golden Globe winners and the various actors and films that won in their respective categories. And the Golden Globes, there's so many controversies and ridiculous things that they've done over the years, and just their blatant corruption and things, right? But I feel like for a lot of us, a lot of the people that won, it wasn't really that controversial. It was like, yeah, no, I can see why that won. Of the films that I've seen, I was like, yep, that was quite good, and that was quite good. It's like, it wasn't anything that really immediately stood out to me and went like, that's ridiculous. I wouldn't have given it to that person or that other person or nominate this. Like overall, I was like, you know what? Even though the show itself might have been a joke and ridiculous and Joe Coy just bombed, like, I think the people that won deserve to win. So no issues with that. But during our very fun conversations, you guys are giving me ideas about just kind of like our favorite movie moments from this year, best movie moments and worst movie moments, and also some other kind of fun awards ideas. Edgy Berserker was talking about that on our own. We're doing our karting segment, our Mario Kart segment, about like certain award ideas, kind of Edgy Berserker awards. I thought was really funny. I was like, I'm gonna try some of that too. And we came up with some fun stuff. I think was pretty cool. But for today and hopefully tomorrow or sometime later this week, I want to talk about the best and worst moments in movies for 2023. I have many honorable mentions, but of course I have my top 10 best movie moments. And of course, there will be spoilers because I do want to talk about some of these scenes. You will have to have seen the movies, or, I will have to explain it with some context so you obviously understand. But, and of course, we can have a great discussion. I'm very curious to hear what your top 10 movie moments are. And the thing is, like, even though maybe some of these movies didn't make my top 10, maybe they were in my honorable mentions, like, I could have, like, some of these films have some, like, my absolute favorite moments. So that'd be kind of cool, chat. But we'll go ahead and we'll get started with my honorable mentions. And I think I have to look, maybe like 10 or so honorable mentions. So it's going to be a long list. But we're going to go ahead and start with really one of the first movies from 2023. And that is Megan. Megan, chat, which for the longest time was on my top 10 list. It eventually got kicked off due to seeing some other films I thought were just a little bit better, but still a great movie. But I think for many of us, our favorite scene from that film, certainly my favorite scene from that movie, and it was featured in the trailer, so we were a little spoiled, but it had to be just the popping and the locking, chat. That's what sold the trailer. When we all saw that, we're like, all right, this looks like it could be either really bad or really fun. And thankfully, chat, I thought it was really fun. Everything that it did with Megan, I thought worked. And of course, we were familiar with rogue AI in films. We had several films from this past year that actually dealt with that concept. But personally, I think Megan handled it the best. They certainly had the most fun with it. And when she's just running down that hallway, chasing after that toy executive, he's like, like a little baby man, and she just starts doing random shit, random stuff, and she just pops, she locks, she dances, and she grabs that paper cutter and uses it like a machete and chops that guy up. That was hilarious. Like, if you weren't sold by then, I think you're probably sold earlier in the movie. That was like in the third act, but it just gave us just so many fun moments, like with this wonderful new creation, this wonderful new horror icon, chat, that's now getting a sequel. But Of course, that scene was great, and I think for a lot of us, we were won over to the concept of the film via the trailer by featuring. It was very, very smart on their part to include that. And yeah, it's one of the most fun segments from the film. So yes, chap, popping and locking with Megan in the Megan movie is definitely one of my one of my favorite scenes this year, and one of my top honorable mentions. Moving on to that, chat, we have the alleyway fight. The alleyway fight in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, while not my top 10, it was my honorable mentions, and it may not be my favorite Mission Impossible movie. There's probably like 2 or 3 that I would rank above Dead Reckoning, but I still really enjoyed the film, and it had some great action sequences in it. I mean, the initial stuff at the airport I thought was quite good, obviously at the end of the train, but I really enjoyed the sequence in the alleyway where you had Tom Cruise trying to get to the specific location because his female counterpart, she's Haley Atwell, who was brilliant in the movie, by the way. She's dealing with the villain whose name I forget, and she's fighting him. But then Tom Cruise, because it's Europe. And they build on top of each other because there's no space anymore. He can't even chop the air like he usually does. She's like, it'd be like this. He would be running like that the whole time. But the whole segment when he's running through the alleyway, trying not to hit like the walls, and he ends up fighting that psychotic mime girl. Played by Pom Klementieff. Is that her name? Pom Klementieff. You guys might not recognize the name, but she's probably best known for playing Mantis in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, in the Avengers movies. And he gets into a whole battle with her and some other thugs and stuff. And the way it's choreographed and edited and just like how, like the environment, I think it made it like really unique. It was very intimate. It felt brutal. And then also cutting back to the fight with Haley Atwell and the villain guy. All that, it was that to me, out of all the moments in the movie, and there's like some really tense moments. They handled, I think, tension very well. Again, in the airport, I thought that was great. Yeah, the movie in the train, but like to me, that's when I felt the most like tense watching. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to kill Haley Atwell? Where's Rebecca Ferguson? Is she going to have? It was like, is Tom Cruise going to kill Pom Klementieff? Like, I was very curious, and I really liked that. I really liked that segment. It was the highlight of that particular Mission Impossible movie. And also kind of cool that they brought in because I think Mission Impossible has always had a villain problem, with the exception of 3. Philip Seymour Hoffman killed it in that movie. He was amazing as the villain. Do you have a wife? You have a girlfriend. I'm going to find her, and I'm going to hurt her. Like, all that was amazing. And this movie, again, has an issue with, movie has a villain problem. Like the main villain and the AI, whatever the hell it's called, God's. What was it called again? God's. I don't know. Not good. But I did like Pom Klementieff. She felt like she shouldn't, like, be a part of this universe, but was like, this is kind of cool that a Bond henchman's here. And her physical scenes of Tom Cruise, especially in that sequence, really worked for me. So definitely want to give a shout out to the alleyway fight scene, I guess chase sequence in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. We're not going to call it part 1 because they're not calling whatever the next one part 2, which probably is for the best. Moving on from that, we get to the distraction scene in Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. Now, Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves was one of my absolute favorite movies of last year. It was in my top 10. I think it was like number 6. I think it was number 6, chat. I think it just came out on top of the bottom 5. And I mean, I love the movie because it was a fantastic gateway into the Dungeons and Dragons property. It pleased D&D fans, but even if you're not familiar with D&D just at all, it just works as a fun action adventure fantasy film, but it also has a lot of comedy. And I think one of the best comedic sequences in the movie deals with Chris Pine's character, who is like your classic Dungeons and Dragons bard, right? And even the trailers, they kind of sold us. Like I think one of the last trailers that they had, or however many trailers they put out, like the last scene they would kind of end on and be the button would be like Chris Pine just playing his lute and be like, yeah, just hopping around and stuff. But then in the movie, we see what happens afterwards, and it's basically a projection that's cast of him playing the lute. And him and his fellow adventurers trying to sneak into this castle to complete this job, this mission. But what happens is like the illusion spell starts going haywire. It stops working, and suddenly Chris Pine just starts turning into like an amorphous blob. He's like, he's like falling apart. He's melting. He's melting, and I that got the biggest laugh out of me. They got the biggest laugh out of the crowd in the theater. I thought it was so funny. And there was just something so charming about Chris Pine playing that lute, doing his little ditties and everything, and it just went horribly wrong. So one of my favorite moments and one of my biggest laughs this year in theaters. My next honorable mention, I know I've talked a lot about kind of some funny sequences, some action sequences, but I do want to get a little serious here. And my next honorable mention is from Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, which to me is one of the most criminally underrated movies of 2023, Chad. It's being completely ignored, it's being completely forgotten, and that makes me sad, especially because there were a number of great performances in that movie from across the cast, especially from Rachel McAdams, who plays Margaret's mother of Barbara Simon. And I would say outside of Margaret, she gets the most screen time, the second most screen time in the film. And, Margaret, she's going through all of her changes, Chad, asking about bras and periods and boys and religion. She also starts asking about her other side of her family because she's very close to her dad's side of the family. And her grandmother, played by Kathy Bates, who does a fantastic job in the film. She's completely getting ignored this award season this year. She was very fun. But she asks about her mother's side of the family, and how Rachel McAdams handled that scene was brilliant because we find out that she came from a very religious family, very like super Christian family, and they had a lot of issues with her dating a Jewish man, that Jewish man being played by Benny Safdie. And she fell in love with him, and she wanted to marry him. And basically, they're like, well, if you're going to marry a Jew, well, you're just dead to us. And we don't want anything to do with you because they're so, religious extremist. And like how she tries to explain that to her daughter, and it starts, and it's not like, oh, and then this happened, it's not played that way. It's not like screaming acting or anything. She's actually being very calm, and she's trying to find her words. It's so natural and realistic. It's what it felt like what any parent struggles with explaining to their child, like what any parent would struggle to say to their child of something that they have no idea about that happened in that parent's past. I feel like it felt something like even we've experienced as kids asking our parents like, why doesn't dad talk to his brother? Why doesn't mom talk to her sister or mom anymore? It's like when we find out, and how she played it and how she's kind of like struggling to keep it together, but still being very calm. And then her mom is like, I'm so sorry to me. It's like, no, honey, no. It's like how that's all done, I thought was great on both actresses, but what they were giving each other and feeding off each other's energy. I thought that was one of the most powerful scenes in the movie. And it's not bombastic. There's not like a sweeping score or music playing. It's just this natural conversation between a mother and a daughter. And it felt very real and very honest. And so definitely want to give that a shout out because no one is talking about this movie, which is kind of crazy to me just because it's based on such a beloved book that's been around for 50 years now at this point. And so the fact that it's not really being discussed in to any extent is bizarre to me. But in any case, I want to give it a shout out because it was great. It's a great scene. Back to the funny. unless I don't know, unless you find family dysfunction hilarious. But one of my other favorite movies this year, it was not my top 10, but it was in my honorable mentions, was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Mutant Mayhem. And, I love the movie because, again, I'm not even a big TMNT fan. I always knew of it, but I didn't really grow up with it like other kids did. I'm a 90s kid, so I didn't really grow up with even though I guess it went into the 80s, but, started as an 80s show, etc. But I've since been exposed to it, over years and things and reviewed different things. But I really liked its interpretation quite a bit. Loved the asymmetrical art style. Thought it was great. But one of my favorite scenes in the movie was Master Splinter who was voiced by Jackie Chan, who I think did a great job. He was one of my favorite characters in the movie. Loved multiple sequences with him, especially his fight scene. But my absolute favorite sequence in the film, honestly, was his explanation to his children about how he raised them, how he raised the turtles of Leonardo and Raphael and Michelangelo and Donatello, and how they were exposed to the ooze. And we just see him as this big rat dad trying to take care of these derpy baby turtles. And they were adorable. You can actually find, it was one of the clips that they put out there for the marketing. And the turtle babies, they're just like waddling around. They don't know where to go. Like there's this one shot in the, because you're focusing on something in the foreground where it must be like Leonardo or someone who's like crawling on top of this pipe or something. But then the background, we see like Donatello. He's just like, he's like, because he can't see. But he finds these glasses. He puts these glasses on. He's like, yeah. And it's so cute. Like you see, like he's giving them a bath and he's feeding them and he's taking care of them. And that was like, wow, this feels like, it's like, it was weird, but we were happy and we were a family. I'm like, yeah, I totally bought that. And he's a good dad. He's a little strict, too strict, and he definitely has his biases against human. Although you kind of understand as to why they kind of show. I think that ends. That sequence ends with him and the kids in horrible danger. And so it actually starts out like really funny and cute, and then it's like, oh shit, and like, people trying to step on the baby turtles. It's like, no. But that whole sequence I thought was quite funny and really heartwarming. And by that point, I was already enjoying the movie. But that's when I was like, oh yeah, I'm sold. And that was great for the marketing as well. My next honorable mention, chat, is from David Fincher's The Killer. Now, The Killer was on my honorable mentions list for my best movies of 2023. I know the movie's not everyone's cup of tea. I do think the first third is perhaps too slow. I know a lot of people are really bothered by the pacing. I think the next 2/3 is quite good. But I actually like learning about the guy's process because this, Michael Fassbender plays an assassin, a nameless assassin. He has this specific process that he goes through to complete jobs. He explains it to us, he narrates it. And he's on this job in France, and we've learned so much about him, his process, how he learns about the target, how he observes the target, how his day-to-day moments are kind of dull and even boring, but it's all for the job. It's all to complete the job, in which I will be very successful at this because I've been successful in the past. And you have the scene where he's looking at the target, who's this big, buttered French boy who's brought in these, I guess you could say sexual entertainers, right? Call girls, whatever. Sex workers, I suppose. And you have this one who's just fucking popping and locking like Megan, just dancing for this guy. And he's observing he's getting his gun ready and everything. And he finally sees what he believes is oh, here's the opening. I'm gonna take the shot and boom, I'm gonna shoot this big butterball French boy. And then she moves, back in front, and then boom, fucking ends up hitting her. And he's like, oh, fuck. And he fucks up. And at that point, it's like, well, that's not good. And so he has to pack up and he has to get out of there. And what's so funny about that, we were told for however long that first part of the movie is, how good this guy is, how I always follow this process, and I know exactly what I'm doing. And then he completely screws up, completely fucks up. And it's kind of almost, even though the poor woman dies, it's kind of strangely just funny to see it happen, because he's like, and then he pays for the mistake. He pays for the mistake for the rest of the movie, which I think the rest of the movie is actually really good, in my opinion. So if you weren't selling the first third, I think once the joke, once the fuck up happens, then I think the movie really gets moving. But I really like this because it's not what I expected. I was like, oh, this guy's just gonna fucking do it, and he's gonna be a cool assassin, badass, because that's what he's been saying. I'm a fucking badass. I know what I'm doing. It's like, oh no, you're not, and he messes up. And I thought that was pretty cool. Went against our expectations. Because we were led to believe this guy is competent, and most of the time he probably is, but you can't be great at everything at every single moment, every single time. It's a really good moment. Nimona was one of my favorite movies, one of my best movies of 2023. I think it was my number 9 on my best of list, and there are so many great moments in the film. The whole movie focuses on these two characters live in this kind of futuristic world. Kind of dystopian-esque, and it's as if Middle Ages is the dominant aesthetic and culture and just continued on. into the far future. And you focus on this one character played by Riz Ahmed, who's this would-be knight who's framed for the murder of the queen. And then you also have the character of Mona, which the movie is named after, voiced by Chloe Grace Moretz, who is a shapeshifter. And she just likes to create chaos, and she wants a partner or a boss to work for her so they can be bad guys and have fun. But, throughout the film, you learn she's not really a bad guy at all. She has a more complicated past. And we learn what that past is after a fight that she has with Riz Ahmed's character. And I thought it was going to play out one way, but it doesn't. And we learned that she's actually far older than we were led to believe, even though she presents herself as a little girl. She is apparently perhaps thousands upon thousands of years old. And we see this sequence where she is trying to fit into a world that just views her as a monster, where she shapeshifts into the birds in the sky. She shapeshifts into all these other creatures and deer, and they just all reject her because, like, you're not us. Get the fuck away from me. And she comes across this little girl, and from this village. And she takes on the appearance of a little girl, and they bond, and they become really good friends. Eventually, she shares the fact that she's a shapeshifter, and she's at first, scared because she thinks that the little girl is going to reject her and despise her. But matter of fact, she's like, oh, this is amazing. And they play, and they have all this fun, everything. But, of course, inevitably, they go back to the village, and one of the parents sees that she's a shapeshifter, and they all think she's a goddamn monster, and all the villagers come out and they attack her, and she defends herself, right, and it causes chaos to ensue. I think a fire happens, and this little girl, after it all happens, even though clearly all the adults are in the wrong, the little girl's observing all this. And Mona, who's kind of broken away from the adults, she kind of looks at her friend help me, tell them that I'm not this monster. And the little girl, she picks up this sword that's on the ground, and she points it at her and goes, go back to the darkness from whence you came, you monster. And you realize this little girl is the person who pretty much founded this entire society of Glorith, who are all about knights and honor and monster hunting. And I was like, you fucking bitch! You're a liar. Your whole thing's based on a lie. And it was oh my God. And then you realize this whole society exists because of this lie and this perception of Nimona. And that's why she hates it. That's why she wants to cause chaos. It's now it makes so much more sense. It's oh, it's really good. And then that leads to a really tragic scene in the movie where she, and again, spoilers, chat, where she tries to kill herself, where she tries to literally impale herself on Glorith's statue, and she's stopped by Riz Ahmed's character. And I was like, this is a beautiful movie. It's so underrated. It's such an underrated movie that, again, no one's talking about it. It should be, I didn't win Best Animated Film, perhaps not, but it deserves to be nominated at the very least. It's Blue Sky's last film, but even then, I think the story they told was great. It surprised me in other ways, and certainly that sequence did as well. And it definitely should be nominated over things like Wish. Give me a break. Really, we're gonna nominate Wish over Nimona? Is that what we're doing? Okay, so it should be nominated. All right, for numerous Academy Awards. No one's talking about it, but it's great, and I loved it. I've seen it 2 or 3 times since then. It's really, really funny. There's only one annoying character I dislike. Other than that, it's a great movie. And Nimona is such a great character, and what a wonderful character for Chloe Grace Moretz to voice and act through, because I know she hasn't had a lot of great movies recently, but she was great in that one. I love that scene. And moving on to my next honorable mention, Shay, I think this is this is my second to last honorable mention. Then we'll get to the top 10. My next one is funny. It's an opening and an ending, Shay. We have an opening and then we have an ending. But the opening of Scream 6. Now, the Scream franchise is actually very well known for its awesome and strong openings. Obviously, the original 1996 Scream has one of the greatest, I think you can make an argument, certainly one of the greatest horror openings of all time. I don't think that's hyperbolic. I think you can also make an argument it's one of the best film openings of all time, where it kind of bucked the trend of what we often expect in the beginning of a horror film. You have a character played by Drew Barrymore, who was the it girl at the time. She was huge. Everyone wanted her in every single project, and everyone thought she was going to be leading the movie. And She gets a call on the phone. She's harassed by the person we let her believe is Ghostface or Ghostfaces, and then is killed in the first 15 minutes. It's like, holy shit, but she's the lead of the movie. Well, guess what? She's not. And I was like, wow. And that's because Scream was just such ahead of its time. It was a deconstructive horror film. It was brilliant. And there's been great openings in the Scream franchise ever since then. Like in 2, I think it's very good. Hell, 3 is fun. 3 is a fun time. 4, I really like 4. And then 5. 6 did something different. 6 did a different kind of opening where we think it's like, okay, this is kind of be what we often expect from Scream 6, where we initially focus on Samara Weaving's character, who previously worked with the filmmakers in Ready or Not, which was super a great movie from, what was that, 2019 as well? God, what a year. Wonderful film. And they brought her in here, and, it plays out where she's in New York, and she's waiting for a date. She's on the phone. This person doesn't see her and leads her down the alleyway. And it's Ghostface and kills her, right? And then that Ghostface kills her and takes off his mask, and it's Tony Revolori. And it's like, oh, we already know who the killer is. Interesting. And then he goes back to campus because it turns out he was a student manipulating his teacher, wanting to kill her. He goes back to campus, already knows the main characters of the film, or he's already established relationships, so he's been prepping for this for some time, already knows Tara and Sam Carpenter. So it's like, oh, so we're seeing like everything from the killer's perspective of the first time, not just the victim. But there's a twist. He goes back to his apartment, which he shares with another guy. They are huge horror fans and they Scream fans, and they worship it. They've been trying to be the new Ghostface killers, basically. And then he gets a call from Ghostface, and he's like, oh, shit. And it's crazy that, like, would-be Ghostfaces are killed by other Ghostfaces, and he goes to the fridge. His other, compatriot is murdered and chopped up and disemboweled in the fridge, and then he gets murdered and chopped up and disemboweled, and has a great line where he's like, because they want to, this is all based on like Scream 5. It's all connected. Where he's just like, but we just want to finish the movie. We want to finish Jack Quaid's movie, right? It was one of the Ghostface killers from 5. And Ghostface is like, who gives a fuck about movies? And just, God, it was like, wow. I thought that was a really cool opening. I was like, oh, nice spin. I mean, Scream franchise always had strong openings. But I was like, wow, you did a little different. You did a little different where you seen it from the perspective of a would-be Ghostface and they inevitably get killed. I thought that was great. And then, chat, we'll end the honorable mentions with an ending. One of my best movies, one of my favorite movies of 2023 was Talk to Me. From the Filippo brothers, who are relative newcomers, at least to theatrical films. They're probably best known for their YouTube videos, which are really, really funny. I've seen a number of them. I think I've shown them to you guys as well. I think they're great. But they did this new twist on the possession subgenre, which you guys know, I'm not a big, ghost horror movie guy, possession horror movie guy. Like, there's exceptions, obviously, to the rule. But Talk to Me was just so original and so much fun. Whole concept being, like, you have a person who, basically, you have, like, these individuals that have access to this embalmed ceramic hand. And if you grasp the hand and say, talk to me, you then summon a spirit, an entity of some sort. And then you say, let me in, and they can then possess you. It's almost like a high, like a drug, right? And you focus on this character who is so obsessed with the concept because, and at one point she believes one of the spirits that is possessing someone is actually her dead mother who she lost recently. And she's like, oh shit, I want to try to contact her, right? Things transpire, things get worse. Some of her friends are hurt, horrifically that is. And, it has the ghost constantly, her mother, quote unquote, manipulating her to do all these bad things. Inevitably, we get to the end of the film in which she's about to seemingly hurt and murder the brother of one of her friends. But then something happens. There's an accident, like in traffic, and then she wakes up in the hospital, but things are off. Something's very weird, and she can't interact with everyone. She's just getting these glimpses. Time is moving very strangely. Sometimes it moves so slow. Sometimes it moves very, very quickly. Like, minutes become like days, and days become minutes, always going back and forth. And eventually, like, she's just isolated until she sees this light on the table, and she sees the hand. She sees the hand right there holding out to her in the darkness, and she goes up to it and she grabs it, chat, and then the whole room is illuminated and it's revealed, and there's these group of people that are all looking at her like, oh, and you realize she's a ghost. She's a ghost now, and they say, talk to me. And it's like, oh my God, I got chills just describing it. And I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was a brilliant way to end that film. I thought that was so cool. An amazing ending. Apparently, I mean, it can just act as a one-off, and but I guess the film was, I mean, it was commercially and critically successful for A24. They're doing a sequel, so I'm curious how they're going to do it. If they're going to connect to the original characters or just new characters. I mean, I guess they could just do new scenarios and things. But man, what a powerful ending. But yeah, those were my honorable mentions, chat. Which there were many, and of course there's so many other scenes this year that I could have put on here, but we'd be here all night long. However, now, my friends, we can go ahead and we can get to the top 10, my personal top 10 best movie moments of 2023. And some of these probably will surprise you guys. Some of these will probably surprise you because maybe some of these movies I didn't even mention for my best movies of 2023 or even honorable mentions, but perhaps there was something in the movie that just really hit me and went, wow, this is crazy. This is special. This is fun. This is scary. Everything in between. And at number 10, chat, my 10th best movie moment of 2023 is from the Super Mario Bros. Movie, chat. The adaptation, of course, the animated adaptation by Illumination of the Super Mario Bros. Video games. And the moment that kind of floored me, and I think floored everybody else, was Jack Black as Bowser singing Peaches, doing that love song about his infatuation, his lust for Peach and her peaches. And I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was great. I think the movie's okay. It's fine. I feel like it could have been better. But one of the highlights throughout the film was Jack Black was consistently great as Bowser throughout the entire movie. I was like, yeah, he's perfect. That was great. And I really like Keegan-Michael Key as Toad as well. To eat the mushroom! I thought that was very funny. He did a great job. They didn't just feel like they were doing their regular voices, right? But with Jack Black, he was great. And I was already liking him. But then when we get to that, him playing the piano, I was like, what is this? And he says, Peach, you're so cool. And I was like, wow. And the whole audience just is like, you can tell like the energy in the room that they were having a blast, and everyone started laughing, and it was really fun. And it's gone on to be just such a great, moment. It's been nominated for a ton of awards. Chad should get an Academy Award nomination. Jack Black should be able to perform Peaches at the Oscars, but it's been done at the VGAs, and it was nominated at Golden Globes. And it's catchy as hell. And they've done their own music video, which I've shown you guys, and that was really fun, where Jack Black dresses up as Bowser. But that moment in the movie was like, that's to me was the highlight. Nothing else was better than that. And then they call back to it at the end of the film again because they knew they had something. There's no doubt. And the Illumination's like, this is pretty special. And so I really liked that moment quite a bit. I thought it was very funny. And it just showed, yeah, again, it showed three things. It showed Jack Black's just, singing abilities, which he's a very talented musician. He's a very talented singer. His, dedication, to his roles. I think he gets a lot of, shit sometimes, but I think he's a very talented actor. And he just didn't play himself in that movie. He played Bowser. And I also felt like his love of this video games. I don't know if he's doing content anymore, but he did the Jablinski games and stuff, and he did those funny videos. And I got the sense like, yeah, he likes games too. And so I was like, yeah, that all came across in that moment, like his love for the characters, ability as an actor, his ability as a singer. And so yeah, one of my best moments of movie moments of 2023. But chat, move on to my ninth best movie moment of 2023, and that was from the film Barbie. Now, Barbie was not on my best of lists this year. There's some great stuff in it, no doubt about it. I think Margot Robbie, I think Ryan Gosling are fantastic in the film. I think they're very good. And I think the first third is strong. I think the movie has some issues in the first two thirds. However, I absolutely loved, again, it's another song, Ryan Gosling's performance of I'm Just Ken. That entire segment in the movie, even though it comes later on in the film, even though I maybe wasn't digging all the aspects, when that happened, I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, from the song itself, to the performance, to the choreography of all the other actors, to the faux goofy battle scene between all the Kens, the Kens loyal to Barbie and the Kens loyal to Ryan Gosling's, Ken. I thought that was great. It's a great just song and dance segment, chat, in the film. And it's one of the best songs featured in a film from this past year. It's better than the fucking song that played at the end of the credits or whatever the hell it was, the montage, again, I'm not saying that, I'm saying I like Billie Eilish. I know that she gets a lot of hate, and I'm not there to add to that at all. I think she's actually quite talented, her and her brother. But in terms of like the song of the movie, it's clearly, I'm just Ken. And that was like a really great moment. That moment showed, that's what I'm talking about. Like, one of my issues with, I think, the Barbie movie is that they would literally stop the film to like, all right, listen, you dum-dums, we're going to explain what we're trying to say to you. It's like, you don't need to do that. Just weave it through the narrative. That's why I feel like something like Poor Things did it much better. In any case. But that's when they were weaving the themes through its narrative and through this song and dance and through Ken, through Ryan Gosling and all these other characters and their would-be faux conflict taking over Barbie Land. That's when it was at its strongest. That's why when it was working, one of the moments where it was working the best, in my opinion. And I loved it. It was so great. I've listened to it several times, listened to the parody videos too. The one from SNL, which I think from Pete Davidson, I like drugs, like all that. That was great. That's great. So yeah, number 9, I'm just Ken from Barbie. But chat. Number 8, my 8th best movie moment of 2023 was the dance. The dance in the film from Poor Things. First of all, Poor Things, one of my favorite movies of the year. It just missed my top 10, but I thought it was great. Directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. Pretty much his own version of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. And I mean, this movie already has, I think, wonderful performances by Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo and Willem Dafoe and many of the other secondary and tertiary characters in the film. But like, they have like these, and like in many Yorgos Lanthimos films in the past, they have just really odd, weird moments that happen. And like, one of my favorite moments from his last film was in The Favorite was this weird dance sequence with all these people, part of the British royal court of Queen Victoria, and they kind of do that again with a dance between Emma Stone and Mark Ruffalo. Emma Stone, who plays the Frankenstein monster creature in this, and Mark Ruffalo, who is very much going against what he typically plays as this very selfish, obnoxious, boorish lawyer, and just the wacky, ridiculous dance that they do, the music that's playing, the like how it's all shot and choreographed, everyone's reactions. That scene itself is a microcosm. That's the movie distilled into a moment in terms of its character relationships, in terms of the performances of these two actors who are leading so much of the film, and just the world that Yorgos Lanthimos has created, this hyper-realistic, over-the-top world, all these different styles and aesthetics, but still having that through line where all the themes are playing out. I thought it was a wonderful segment in the movie, and showed off everything that works, so much that works about that film, in my honest opinion. And then moving on from number 8, chat, my seventh best movie moment of 2023, and that is from The Boy and the Heron. And one of the moments that probably stood out the most to me in that film was actually the opening. And that was the hospital fire in which Mahito's mother was killed. Now, I'm a big fan of Studio Ghibli, specifically Hayao Miyazaki, and many of his works. Princess Mononoke is still my favorite film of his. I love Laputa, House in the Sky, Nausicaa of the Wind, and Spirited Away, Porco Rosso, of course, and obviously now the Boy and the Heron. He's done so much great work over the course of his illustrious career. But the thing that watching that movie, and I think recently, because I was going over like my favorite scene, because I wanted to include something from this movie because I really did enjoy it so much, and just the world and just the way it looks and the aesthetic, and I love 2D. I love theatrical 2D animation. We just don't get it anymore. But it made me start thinking about just Miyazaki, like my other favorite scenes from Miyazaki movies, and I also started to think about scenes that kind of disturb me from Miyazaki movies. And like, I think most people, when they think of Miyazaki, they think of these just beautiful, sweeping, fantastical moments, these wholesome moments. But occasionally he'll sneak in some like really disturbing, like, what the fuck just happened? It's like, Jesus, like, and Princess Mononoke comes to mind immediately, where you have the one scene where this one samurai, this one soldier gets like his arms like blasted off, like chopped off his body because Prince Ashitaka, he's become so powerful because of the demon infection, and he shoots this arrow and it goes, and his guy's, the arms just explode. He's like, it's like, oh my God. Like that happens. Or like, when the spirit of the forest gets like shot, gets its head cut off, it's like, it just has these kind of shocking moments of violence in the film. It's like, oh my God. And it kind of take you aback because this is not really what you often associate with Miyazaki movies. And that was the same thing with The Boy and the Heron, where there are actually a number of disturbing scenes in here. There's like fucking, man-eating parakeets at one point. There's German sequences. But then like how... Like this movie opens up, it doesn't open up with like, a sweeping, fantastical, just beautiful thing. It's like, it's literally the most tragic moment in this family's life, the most tragic moment in Maito's life, where which again takes place during World War II. So you have all the fire bombings from, the Allies and the Americans, and they're constantly on alert because of that. They have like the sirens, the sirens going off all the time, and they have this hospital fire, and like the way that the flames are shown, and it's like they're engulfing people, but Maito is running towards the hospital, wanting to save his mother, and it's just like, God, it's very tragic, and you kind of understand then as to why he's such a little shit throughout so much of the movie because of that tragedy. But it was a very different way to start a Miyazaki film, because more often than not, so many of them start like very wholesome and very quiet or very whimsical or very fun. And the movie didn't start with a fun scene. It started with like perhaps one of the most tragic scenes in the movie. And I really liked that. I thought it was a bold choice that worked very well for me. But moving on from number 7, chat. Speaking of Japan. Number 6, and I kind of cheated because I have 2 scenes. I got 2 scenes from this movie. Chad. So I gotta give me these 2 scenes. But number 6, Godzilla -1, and the first scene I want to talk about obviously is during one of Godzilla's attacks on this community. Of course, people that need some context, we follow a would-be kamikaze pilot who's dealing with survivor's guilt. He first encounters a proto-Godzilla before he's exposed to nuclear radiation, and that decimates this Japanese military base. And he could have potentially attacked Godzilla. He does not. He lives with this guilt. Eventually, Godzilla has been exposed to this radiation, and our main lead is trying to protect his new family that he's created since coming back after the war. And one of the scenes in which Godzilla makes landfall and he's attacking this city, and he's just being so destructive. He's fucking vindictive in this movie. He's an asshole. Godzilla's an asshole in this film. Usually he's always portrayed as like this. He's a force of nature. He doesn't even realize there's like, oh shit, I didn't know there's people down there. This one's like, I fucking see all of you. He's purposely just wanting to step on all of them. He doesn't give a shit. And I was like, wow, you're an asshole. Godzilla's an asshole. And then at one point, he didn't even have to do this. No one was bothering him, really. Oh, yeah, he got shot by like a tank. He's like, fuck you, whatever. And it's his atomic breath scene. It's the first time where he truly uses atomic breath in the movie. And this is probably, listen, we've gotten a lot of atomic breath scenes in Godzilla films. A lot of great atomic breath scenes across multiple decades, right? But how they show this one is just so horrifying and destructive, in which he's powering up his atomic breath, and you see the plates, the spines on his back, like popping out of his back and being illuminated by the blue atomic energy, and then and he shoots it out of his mouth. But it's not like a flame like it's often portrayed. It's like a laser blast that then lands like further into the city and goes and creates a huge mushroom cloud. He's like, it just dropped another atomic bomb. And everyone's like, shit, not again. And it just fucking, Godzilla's like, whatever, it doesn't bother me. And it just wipes out the city. And like all these people are flying in the air. It's like, oh my God, it's so destructive, so incredibly destructive and terrifying. It's just like, how are we gonna beat this thing? And then, all right, and this is the last. This is, we have the last scene of the movie. This is the spoiler again. Last scene of the movie where they try to defeat Godzilla with depressurization, where they try to because he's an aquatic reptilian creature, amphibious and reptilian, and they're like, because when you're in the water, when you're deep sea diving, you can't just go right up because it'll fuck up your body, right? Be like, and everything, right? You get the bends and everything that's about that. And so their plan is, we are going to literally mess him up, break him apart by forcing him just to go into the water so quickly and so fast that his body will just be broken. Like, that's their plan, right? And it doesn't work. It fucks him up. Godzilla's like, we get Derpyzilla in this movie. You do get a bit of a Derpyzilla. He comes up and he's like, hey, guys. And he's like, I'm going to use my goddamn atomic breath on you. And everyone's like, well, we're fucked. It's over. All right, goodbye, everybody. Like, they're all looking at each other like, hey, we tried. And then, chat, our kamikaze pilot, our would-be kamikaze pilot, we see him come at the last moment, flying his plane right as he's like, everyone's like, yeah, fucking go, dude. And as the plane's coming in, he's just coming right at Godzilla's mouth. He's like, fuck it. And boom, he goes right into the mouth hole, right into the goddamn mouth hole. And Godzilla's like, and it goes right in. He's like, and his head explodes. And his goddamn head explodes, chat. And everyone's like, yeah! And then he just fucking breaks apart and he falls back in the water. And it's so goddamn awesome. Both I had to shout out both those scenes. They're kind of related, both atomic breath scenes, and I won't spoil too much about what happens in that scene. Because there's another thing that happens. But amazing. So goddamn good. I loved it, chat. I loved it. People went, yeah, in my screening when he came in on his plane. And then, chat, moving on to the top 5. Those are like already amazing scenes in all those movies, all those respective movies. Moving on to the top 5, chat, of the best movie moments, the best movie moments of 2023. Number 5 is a scene from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And it's the part where Rocket loses all of his friends. Like, this is the story where this particular movie is very much focused on Rocket and how he came to be and his experience with the High Evolutionary and how he was experimented on along with other animals. And we get these sequences. Well, while Rocket is critically injured and dying, he's seeing his, I guess you can describe his life flashing before his eyes. He's remembering his friends. And we're introduced to characters like Lila, who's this little otter, and Teefs, who is this walrus, and this rabbit who's like a spider rabbit. And your name is Fly because she likes to fly. And it's really, they're really kind of gross, but they're still kind of cute at the same time. But that's the family that Rocket has, and they all learn to love each other, and they're really good friends. And they have all these dreams where they want to go and see the new world, and they want to see the sky and everything. They can't wait. And well, Rocket learns Evolutionary. He's like, yeah, we're gonna fucking kill all of you. we don't care. I'm trying to make the perfect race. You guys are fucking experiment. Fuck you. And Rocket's like, we gotta get the hell out of here, right? We gotta get the hell out of here. And he's trying to explain all these things to his friends. He's like, I'm going to free you now. And he ends up freeing them. And they're finally free of the cages. And he's, dancing with Lila. And they're having so much fun. Everyone's like, yeah. And then, boom! And then Lila is shot by the High Evolutionary. And she just looks at Rocket. And she falls down just dies. And Rocket gives out just one of the most painful just wails of anguish that it made me cry. I got water on. I was like, oh God, you got me. As soon as it just felt like that. Listen, everyone's nominating Bradley Cooper for Maestro. Fuck that. All right. I think that's Oscar bait. His performance, this was his best performance this year. He went, ah! It wasn't like a Vader lark. No, nothing like, it's just like, that's pain. That is pain internalized and then vocalized in such a way, and then he fucking loses it. He runs at the High Evolutionary. High Evolutionary's like, oh! He starts shooting everything, and Rocket just basically rips his face off, and we see what his face looks like later. It's like, oh my God, he looked like what the Red Skull probably should have looked, just like that. And then he looks behind him and he realizes like Teefs and Fly have been shot and they've been killed as well. And he's just like, oh, God damn it. And I was like, that moment That moment was so great. I mean, it was so incredibly sad and tragic, but man, it hit me hard. And I was like, this is very dark, But to me, that clearly, Marvel just said, all right, do whatever you want, James, because that was his last film, and just everything how they treated him was really shitty, and so I think they clearly gave him carte blanche to go as far as they would probably not allow other people to go, but they did that with him, and I thought that was really cool. And I thought that scene was fantastic. Bradley Cooper did a better job voicing a raccoon than he did playing Leonard Bernstein, in my honest opinion. Beautiful sequence in the movie, and tragic. Number 4, my 4th best scene of 2023, and that is from the film The Iron Claw, which focuses on the Von Erich wrestling family, specifically the Von Erich brothers in the 1980s. And has a fantastic cast, which is led by Zac Efron, who plays Kevin Von Erich, I believe. And throughout the rest of the movie, this is also based on, again, the real life Von Erich brothers. We basically see the various tragedies that affect the family and the deaths of the brothers. Some die from disease, some die from suicide, and eventually, by the end of the film, Zac Efron's Kevin Von Erich is the only one left. And it's one of the last scenes of the film, and it's when he's watching his 2 sons play outside, and he starts crying, and the sons go over to him, and they're like, why are you crying, Dad? And he's like, well, I'm just, he's talking about seeing them reminded me of myself and my brothers, how we would always used to play, but I'm a brother without any brothers. I have no brothers, and the kids are like, and he's crying while he's saying all this, and it's beautiful. And the 2 sons say to him, we'll be your brothers, Dad. And he's like, oh, thank you, boys. And it's like, oh my God. And that was like the last big cry. There were several times I cried during this movie. That was one of the last big cries of the film. Just beautiful. And again, I still say this, Zac Efron should be nominated for Best Actor. I think, what should he win? That's up to debate. But I think he should be nominated. He gave such, him and everyone, so much of the cast, I think, did a fantastic job in this film, from Jeremy Allen White to some of the other character actors in the movie. But wow, he shouldered so much of that, and he sold that scene. And the actor from the 2 kids too was great. They sold it as well, and you felt that emotion come across. And here I'm a brother without brothers, and it's like, oh my God, that's like literally that's what it is. That's the subtitle of the movie, A Brother Without Brothers. So a beautiful, tragic sequence, but kind of hopeful, because he eventually does get that big family again, but it just takes time. And, sadly, he had to go through so much tragic loss in the process. But yeah, people are sleeping on The Iron Claw, Chad. I highly recommend The Iron Claw. It's a sad movie, but I think you guys really like it. Number 3, my 3rd best movie moment of 2023 is from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, and that is the epic and incredibly well animated and choreographed chase sequence in the Spider-Man 2099 world. Of course, what leads to that scene is Miles Morales. He wants to join this new Spider-Verse initiative, which is being led by Miguel O'Hara, voiced by Oscar Isaac. But in reality, Miguel O'Hara is trying to prevent Miles from interfering with canon events, because Miles himself is an enigma. He's actually shouldn't even have gotten that spider bite. Shouldn't even have these powers. He's from a different dimension, and you're messing with the canon. And so we had to prevent you from leaving, and which would then result in the death of probably his parents, specifically his father. And Miles like, fuck that, and he ends up escaping, and he has to run away from Miguel O'Hara and all the other spider people in the movie. We're all telling him, you got to do this, you got to do it this way, Chad. And it's very funny. Get to see all these different Spider-Man and Spider-Woman designs that are really crazy and really cool. There's some great gags in there, no doubt about that. There's stuff from like the original 60s cartoon. There's Spider-Cat. There's a spider Tyrannosaurus Rex. You know, you have all these other creature design that all culminates on this kind of like monorail, and it's in all the trailers. It's like animated Spider-Mans from different animated Spider-Man films, like, or in universes, in series, like Spectacular Spider-Man. It's like, fuck you, Miles. It's like, how can you say that? I loved you. And then it results in Miguel. I mean, we've seen the trailers. Miguel Harris is like, you don't know what you're doing, and just screaming at him like you shouldn't have happened. And finally, Miles is like, man, fuck you. Everyone keeps telling me I have to do it this way or that way. Nah, I'm going to do it my own way. And he kicks him off, and he sends all the spider assholes, you know, falling backwards. Shaz like, yeah, Miles, you tell him, man. You do things your own way, right? But that whole sequence there, apparently I think I read an article. It took them years to like you know, that's because it took a while to make this movie. It wasn't like, you know, like we did the next film the next year. It's like, no, it took like 5+ years. And they said people were working on that specific sequence, like animators and stuff, for like 4 years. It was one of the most difficult aspects of the movie, but it was one of the best aspects of the movie. It was gorgeous looking, obviously, showcasing that beautiful 2.5D animation, which I'm so glad is proliferating right now and being used by other studios, or at least it has an influence in other people's, other film studios and animation companies, animation houses, aesthetics now. So we already have that, but then you have all these funny gags, but then you have like just this, you know, tragedy of Miles like being excited about being welcomed, but he's like, no, we're just trying to trap you, and then we're gonna let your family die. And it's just like, Jesus, you know, and then him feeling betrayed with Gwen, who he was just lusting after, chat, you know, drawing thick booty butt pictures of Gwen in his journal. And he's like, what? I drew you with a dump truck ass and you betrayed me. And she's like, I'm sorry. But, you know, so it's a great moment, chat. And it, you know, then it leads to like kind of the final act, which I feel like that movie could have ended like 5 different times, which is kind of amazing. And I'm so excited for the sequel. I can't wait. Take as long as you want, obviously. You know, still kind of like, it's such a big cliffhanger ending at the same time. It's like, but still, this movie does so much right. And that sequence to me is like just one of the best action sequences in a movie this year. Animated or live action. But number two, Chad, and this is this is kind of one scene. It's kind of like a sequence of this movie. And number 2, I have The Holdovers. And the scene is the Christmas party and the kitchen, in which we follow the multiple characters in the movie. Paul Giamatti's character, Mr. Hunnam, and Don McSessa, who's the student that's left behind, and also the head cook, the head chef of the all boys Catholic school, played by Joy Devine Randolph. And we learn in the film that she is having a tough time this year because it's a period piece that's set in 1970s New England. And we learned that her son, who attended the school, was getting a first-class education, but he died in Vietnam because he wanted to go to college, and they didn't have the money to go to college. He thought, well, I'll ride, go to Vietnam. I'll get everything I need, and I'll be fine. But he dies, and she's really struggling. And we get hints of that throughout the film, but she's very much a rock in the movie too. She's kind of like talking sense to like Paul Giamatti's character when he needs to hear it because he just doesn't know how to talk to people. And she's a source of warmth, but you could tell she's having a rough time. And when she goes to this Christmas party, it kind of spirals out of control, where she starts drinking too much and people are trying to calm her down and things. And like she has control, like, hey, put me in charge of the vinyl player, the record player. And then someone's like, let's put on some happy music. She's like, don't fucking touch that vinyl player. Don't touch that record player. She's like, Jesus. Everyone's like, okay. And then, eventually, I think Dominic Sessa's character, he goes to Paul Giamatti's Mr. Hunnam and say, we gotta go to the kitchen. He's like, what's going on? What's wrong? And they go, and she's having a fucking emotional breakdown. And and it just feels so because she knocked her like shoes off. She's barefoot and she's just there, and everyone's just quiet. And she just, and again, it's very similar to Rocket Raccoon, where she just gives out like this emotional, this expression of, he's gone. He's gone. And it's like, it's a mother's grief. She's just expressing a mother's grief in there. And you have people that, whether they can understand or not, they know she's going through so much pain at this moment. And like Paul Giamatti's character, Mr. Hunnam, like he has a connection with her, and he knows. Like he really defends her throughout the film, especially at one point when he fucking flips out in this one kid. I love that scene so much. But it's the moment where it's the scene where she's gonna get her Academy Award for. It's a mother's grief, and it feels so incredibly real and authentic. And I got watery-eyed watching that scene. It's a sad scene, but it's a great scene. And it's a great movie. Again, The Holdovers is my favorite, my best movie of 2022. It's going to be a modern Christmas classic, chat. Please do not sleep on the Holdovers. I recommend it a lot. Especially if you love Dead Poet Society, if you grew up watching Dead Poet Society, you're going to love this. It feels like a natural companion piece. It feels like, which is also a companion piece, I think also taking place in the 60s. Early 60s or something, or maybe late 60s. But it's like this happens at the school across the lake or something. It's like these events are literally happening at the same time, you know? So good, so good. But number one, Chad, this might come as a surprise to you for some. Number one, my best movie moment from 2023 is from the film Oppenheimer. Now, again, Oppenheimer was part of my honorable mentions. It's not on my top 10 best movies. There's a lot that this movie does right. I do think it's one of Christopher Nolan's best movies in quite some time. Probably his best movie since Inception. As I've said before, if you were to ask me in the 2000s who was the best working filmmaker right now, I would tell you Christopher Nolan. From Memento all the way to Inception, amazing films, incredible filmography with drama and genre content across the board. But I've not been the biggest fan of Christopher Nolan's 2010 work. There's a lot of things that left me wanting and I was frustrated by, but I think Oppenheimer was the first one in a long time where he kind of went back to the characters, which, again, I feel like he became so obsessed with the technical aspects of the filmmaking, he ignored the stuff what I think worked a lot about his movies, which was the character stuff, those moments, whether it be, you know, the incredible performances in something like Memento, or, you know, the interrogation scene between Batman, the Joker, and the Dark Knight. Like, it was always, of course, yes, he did spectacle so well, but it was the characters that made it work. And he gets back to that to a great degree in Oppenheimer. And I think a lot of people would probably put like the Trinity test. They'd put that down as like one of the best scenes this year. And it's a good scene. It's a very good scene. But to me, chat, like, the scene that I went, this is the Nolan I want always. This is what I want him to just do all the time. And it's the scene where Robert Downey Jr.'s character of Strauss, who was the leader of the Atomic Energy Commission, he's basically having an emotional breakdown after some testimony comes forward, provided by Rami Malek's character and others, about how he was systematically for like years trying to discredit good old Bobby Oppenheimer and manipulate him so he'd be kind of shamed and investigated and probably thrown in prison. And because of slights, because his pride was damaged, perceived slights, you know, about how, you know, a conversation what he was not privy to between Albert Einstein and Oppenheimer, and he thought, he turned him against me, he turned the scientists against me, and it is such a brilliant performance, but it's also paired with some masterclass editing of the interrogation of Oppenheimer and his communist ties and everything that in regards to Los Alamos and the Manhattan Project, and it just exposes how pathetic and prideful Strauss is in that sequence and just throughout the entire film. And it's a Robert Downey Jr. performance we haven't seen in quite some time. I mean, he was always excellent as Iron Man, of course, and he was always excellent throughout his career. But, you know, we haven't really seen him play like just a despicable villain, you know, or just this let's be kind, this morally complicated character in quite a while, and just his vindictiveness and his bitterness and his pride that he's just expressing and just showing just what a little man he actually is. It's like, oh my God, like this is Nolan firing on all cylinders. This is the Nolan I want. This is the Nolan that made me just shocked when I saw Memento, and the twist with Guy Pearce's character, came, and how he's been doing this he's using his own illness to just get what he wants and manipulate other people. This is the scene where it reminded me of the scene where like we're introduced to, I mean, so many of the sequences with Heath Ledger's Joker, of him interacting with the gangsters to torturing poor Brian on the would-be Batman on camera, and it's like, are you the real Batman? And why do you dress up like him? Like all that, I was like, oh my, you can hear a pin drop, and that gave me that same feeling. It gave me that same feeling that those movies gave me when I watched them for the first time, or I watched them with like a huge audience, like we're watching something special. And it was that sequence there. It was like, that's Nolan I want always. Just like, yeah, the technical stuff is there. It's great, but it's the character stuff. It's the character stuff and how it's edited together. And you're seeing all these other performances, but it's all centered on this man's breakdown and his pride and his bitterness, and it's like a gaping, gushing wound, and I'm just like, that's cinema. In the words of Martin Scorsese, that is cinema. So yes, yeah, my number one movie moment. My number one movie moment this year is Robert Downey Jr.'s Straw's breakdown from the film Oppenheimer. It's not my favorite movie of the year. It's not my best movie. It's not my honorable mentions though. It's not my honorable mentions. But it has what I think is easily like one of the best moments where everything in the movie worked in that little moment right there. I thought it was brilliant. But all these moments to me were fantastic, and I think they were all great. And I imagine we all have a number of moments that I could have brought up so many other moments from this year. And I'm sure you guys too. I want to know about your favorite moments this year. What was your favorite movie moment? For any of the films I just brought up, or was there something in another movie you went, this was really cool. This really affected me. This was an emotional thing. I thought this was funny. This terrified me. Please let me know.